43 and 44. The TV's off. It just will not. Where's my remote?
Coffee here. This room coffee sure smells good too. Does anyone want coffee?
It doesn't stay on.
He doesn't spare. Or he can ask me, do you want me to go get the
No, I only drink coffee in the morning.
He's just
Probably smart. I'm not smart. I ain't gonna leave you alone.
Smart.
He's very
You're
smart.
to be hagged now.
What we do?
So Shelby was on her bridal weekend.
Yeah.
Is Brandy in y'all's wedding? I was trying to figure out. So that's Brandy Williams. I thought I saw Brandy Williams. And then Carly, I saw
Yep. You
Carly.
know Carly?
I know Carly. I remember when Carly was doing a big thing.
Oh,
And then of course sister-in-law Lynn.
yeah.
And then
Okay, there it is.
I didn't know two or three of them. I was trying to figure out all the ones, and then I saw
Yeah.
Fallon. And
Ryan's
are
there.
those cousins? Is that your sister? Is your sister?
My sister's not into
In that-
charity. Yeah, she just, I don't know, like she's so busy, like we hardly ever get to see each other, so.
Yeah, I didn't know if she. Or were those cousins?
It's
Or
hard.
who are those friends? Does she have any cousins? Because doesn't Shelby got some cousins? Isn't Tiffany's daughter getting married?
She has tons
Yeah.
of cousins. Plenty of cousins.
No, I knew
Yeah.
that.
Like
I was,
Taylor's
wondering,
her cousin.
I was wondering how many of them were cousins.
I don't think any of her cousins are in the wedding party.
Because they're all getting, well, Taylor's getting married at right around the same
Yeah, I
time.
knew they had lots of things going on.
Yeah.
So,
That's large print for the easy to read.
No, it's too hard for me to pick
you don't
I
like
don't
to
know. I'm sitting on my leg. You sit on your leg. We go look for us some big, thick books. Don't get a pie.
I was looking at your shirt. It says Broken Crown Steel Color, but they never taste like candy corn. This is the time of year where you make candy corn jokes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I guess I want to.
No other time.
Well, what other time do you ever find candy corn?
Yeah, because you either love it or you hate it. There's no in between.
Yeah.
You don't like, oh, I love candy
You're right,
corn.
though. I love her hate it.
Like jelly beans. You either love it or you don't like it.
Well, mix it with salted caramel and you'll love it. Because everything's good with salted caramel. Even dirt.
Pass the book.
Okay.
It's good with sauce, caramel, pour it on it. Yeah.
So we're gonna kind of roll back and look at a little bit of 43 because we did some of this last week. You remember that that the famine was severe in the land, and they got to go back to Egypt. So they got to go down to Egypt. There's this down and up language that we've been involved in now, like a seesaw, all the way through. And of course, Judah says that we can't go without Benjamin. If we show up without Benjamin, we're toast. All right. And so we had this thing where Reuben had said earlier that if we don't come back with Benjamin, you can have my two sons. Do whatever you want to. Okay, but then the conversation went on. And finally, Judah steps up and he says, you know what? You can have my life if Benjamin is not spared when we leave. And so there we have, it's like, had God already chosen who was going to be the predecessor to his son, but does this moment define it for everybody? And it does in the literature. It does really define that this is the model son in a lot of ways. Not only is he stepping forward and offering his life, but he's overcoming his own failure in that he knows that he's made and is yet to admit to his dad. Now this has been a long time. I mean, it's like the best kept family secret in a family where Joseph's already proved we don't keep secrets. We just blabbermouth everything. We tell on our brothers and we declare the dreams and all of that. But they've managed to keep this a secret all this time. So they returned to Egypt, and you remember the men. They took the gift, doubled the amount of silver and Benjamin, and they immediately went down to Egypt. That's right. So why we keep bringing that up? This is a precursor to the whole exile narrative that we find in Scripture. And we've seen it in a lot of places before this, but the language becomes more direct. We're going down to Egypt, the place that is the pit, okay? But then we're going to find out that God's able to turn the pit into an Eden. And then we see later in the actual exile how these things mirror each other, as if God, through history and through the patriarchs, are preparing them for the proper way to interact with Him in the place of their deepest gloom. So Joseph saw Benjamin with him, and he said to the steward, "Take these men to my house." You remember the story. They slaughtered an animal. They fixed lunch. They were afraid because they were taken to Joseph's house. They thought, well, this is the end. Don't know why they thought that. But they've developed an attitude by now, see? They don't trust anything. And it's all because of the way they treated Joseph at the very beginning. They have developed an angst about life that has never escaped them. They've had to lie to their father every day. Okay? They went down to Egypt, and then everything goes wrong. At Joseph's arrangement, he makes it look like they've stolen all the food before, and you remember all that? And now they got to go back, and they're risking Benjamin's life because of everything that Joseph hinted at. He never said, but he kind of hinted to them. So they find themselves in this place of weakness, without any power, at the mercy of this man that they keep referring to, that we know to be Joseph. So why do they say they brought him to the house? Because the silver, we left with the silver that we had brought to buy everything, and of course Joseph had put it in the saddlebags. So they are fearful of being accused of being thieves and dishonest. The very thing that they were at the very beginning of this whole episode was dishonesty, and now they're worried about being accused of being dishonest, and really that's how they've lived their life, at least before their father, and certainly with Joseph, because they never did really know what happened to Joseph. It was all a lie. So they said, "We really did come down here the first time only to buy food, but we got back where we were camping, and there was full of silver, so we brought additional silver. We don't know who put our silver in the bags, but Joseph certainly does." Okay, so the steward said, "May you be well, don't be afraid. Your God and the God of your father must have put treasure in your bags. I received your silver." So the servants, they're telling everything that Joseph says. Yeah.
Do not fear.
So the servant is saying, "We received your silver.
Yeah,
The only way that there's silver in your bags is because your God put it there."
Something happened.
Yeah. Something miraculous happened here where God is providential over your life. Now, why Joseph wanted that, we're going to see later. It's an object lesson. Yeah. So they brought him to Joseph's house, gave him water to wash their feet, and got feed for their donkey. Very hospitable, treating them not like thieves or dishonest men at all. Since the men had heard that they were going to eat a meal there, they prepared their gift for Joseph's arrival at noon. Remember, they brought the best of what they had, which amounted to almonds and some other things. They didn't have a lot to bring. So when Joseph came home, they brought him the gift, and they carried him in the house, and they bowed to the ground before him. This is the third time that we find the dream coming true. Yeah.
Joseph's going, "I've seen this before."
Yeah. You guys are fixing to have not a rude awakening, but quite powerful reunion. He asked them if they were well, and he said, "How is your elderly father that you told me about? Is he still alive?" So his first question is about his father, and they answered, "Your servant, our father, is well. He is still alive." And they knelt low. Again, we have this image. Okay, they're down in the pit of Egypt. They're down in this place of exile, and they're even lower than that. Okay, they are at the bottom in this whole thing. So when he looked up and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, he asked, "Is this your youngest brother that you told me about?" Then they said, "May God be gracious to you, my son." Then he said, "May God be gracious to you, my son." And he hurried out because he was overcome with emotion for his brother, and he was about to weep. He went into the inner room and he wept. Then he washed his face, came out, regaining his composure. He said, serve the meal. So here he is. Rachel's only 2 sons, okay, are together after all this time of being separated. And the most powerful guy in the world, you could argue, is overcome with emotion at what has happened. Now, until they, by happenstance, they show up in Egypt, Joseph's already made up his mind that he's dead to all of that. He's never going to have anything to do with his family again. It's done. And then,
in his face.
yeah, little did he know it was God's providence. He figures it out, but little does he know at that moment when he's kind of saying, this is my life now, that his brothers were going to show up and change everything for him, but certainly for them as well. So they served him, Joseph, by himself, his brothers by themselves, and the Egyptians who were eating with us by themselves. Because the Egyptians could not eat with Hebrews, since it is detestable to them. So eating with Hebrews, later it's detestable for the rest of the world to eat with the Hebrews. Here the Egyptians kind of set the stage for that. They were seated before him in order by age, from the firstborn to the youngest. The men looked at each other in astonishment. Why? Because Benjamin gets 5 times more at his plate. Okay.
Typical baby stuff.
Yeah.
Benjamin probably
Yeah.
wondering why too. He's taking it all.
Yeah. Well, they're this would happen at home. That was Rachel's son. But why is it happening here? Okay.
He don't understand either.
Well, they certainly would not have understood what Joseph was communicating, but he was definitely communicating.
Joseph knew what he was doing.
So he was communicating like it's me. Is that what he's trying to do, or he's testing them?
Well, this is the way that I view this, okay? Only Joseph would have known that was Rachel's. They knew all it was Rachel's son, but only Joseph would have valued the special relationship that Benjamin was to Rachel. Okay? So he draws attention to that. The other brothers were sitting there, astonished by it, but was there astonishment because it was 5 times a serving? Or, how does he know? Yeah, how does he know?
They're
That's right.
questioning, like, what's going
That's right.
on here?
So it's almost a foreshadowing.
But they just to find out how he knows.
Yeah.
He's just
Yeah.
getting them ready. He's just getting them ready for what they're going to find out.
So the final test is here. So Joseph commanded his steward, fill the men's bags with as much food as they can carry, and put each one's silver at the top of the bag. Put my cup, the silver one, at the top of the youngest one's bag, along with the silver for his grain. So he did what Joseph said. So Joseph's doing it again. The silver's back in the bags, but now we have this cup that is very special to Joseph. Where we learn that he uses this cup for divination. He's able to see things as a result of however it works with this cup. I don't know. But the point is, very valuable, very important to everything that Joseph's able to do. Okay, that's what he's leading everyone to believe. He says, at morning light, the men were sent off with their donkeys. They had not gone very far from the city when Joseph said to his steward, get up, pursue the men, and when you overtake them, say to them, why have you repaid evil for good? All right, you got to remember that line. It's an important line. Okay? Isn't this cup that my master drinks from and uses for divination? What have you done? What have you done is wrong. I was touching, it was moving. So when he overtook him, he said those words to them, and they said to them, what does my Lord say these things? Your servants could not possibly do such a thing. We even brought back to you from the land of Canaan the silver we found at the top of our bags. How could we steal silver or gold from your master's house? If it is found with us, your servants, he must die, and the rest of us will become my Lord's slaves. So here we are, man. Yeah, you don't want to ever say those kind of things.
Did you curse yourself? Don't even know right now.
Yeah.
Or you could.
So confident in the veracity of their honesty when they haven't lived an honest day since they threw Joseph in the pit. So confident in this, all right, and all it's going to do is lead to trouble. So the steward replied, "What you have said is right, but only the one who is found to have it will be my slave, and the rest of you will be blameless." So if one sins, he pays for the sin. Not everyone. Ooh. Yeah, you ever fish that one out of there? So each one quickly lowered his sack to the ground and opened it. The steward searched, beginning with the oldest and ending with the youngest. The cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Then they tore their clothes, and each one loaded his donkey and returned to the city. Man, bad news.
I feel bad for Reuben
When-
now.
when
He's
you-
a dead man.
No, Judah. Yeah.
Judah.
Yeah. When you start tearing your clothes, you know it's a bad day. Yeah. So when Judah and his brothers reached Joseph's house, he was still there. They fell to the ground before him. How many times? This is like the 5th time. What have you done? Joseph said to them. Didn't you know that a man like me could uncover the truth by divination? Okay, so he already knows the truth of everything that's going on. What can we say to my Lord? Judah replied. How can we plead? How can we justify ourselves? God has exposed your servant's iniquity. We are now my Lord's slaves, both we and the one in whose possession the cup was found. So he's saying, what can we say? They don't know what to say. None of this is adding up, but the only way to preserve their life is to become a slave. And that's what he's offering here. Then Joseph said, I swear that I will not do this. The man in whose possession the cup will be found will be my slave. The rest of you can go in peace to your father.
Oh, no, we can't.
I want to.
Another man first back there.
We
I'd rather be your slave.
It's not going to be no peace.
Judah's thinking, if I go home, now Judah's in the pits, right?
Yeah,
If I go home, I'm a dead man.
yeah,
And if I stay here, I'm a no man.
yeah.
I'm not a slave. I'm not a citizen. I'm not anything. I'm a beggar on the street. Okay?
So it's truly the pits.
Yeah, he is truly in the pit. He would be truly in the pit.
Dwellers.
Yeah. So, Judah's plea. But Judah approached him and said, My Lord, please let your servant speak personally to my Lord. Do not be angry with your servant, for you are like Pharaoh, meaning that your anger can bring anything anything it wants.
You have the final
Yeah.
word.
My Lord asked his servants, do you have a father or brother? And we answered, my Lord, we have an elderly father and a younger brother, the child of his old age. The boy's brother is dead. He is the only one of his mother's sons left, and his father loves him. So that's a summary of what they said the first time that they were there. Then you said to your servants, bring him to me so that I can see him. But we said to my Lord, the boy cannot leave his father. If he were to leave, his father would die. Then you said to your servants, if your younger brother does not come down with you, you will not see me again, meaning that you're going to die. You're going to starve to
I'm
death.
not going to give you anything to eat.
Yeah. So Judas laid out the whole scenario that happened earlier. This is what happened when we went back to your servant, my father. We reported to him the words of my Lord. But our father said, go again and buy us a little food. We told him we cannot go down unless our younger brother goes with us. If our younger brother isn't with us, we cannot see the man, meaning that we can't buy food. Your servant, my father, said to us, you know that my wife bore 2 sons. One is gone from me. I said he must have been torn to pieces, and I have never seen him again. If you also take this one from me, and anything happens to him, you will bring my gray hairs down to Sheol in sorrow. Meaning, same thing he said earlier. If something happens to Benjamin, I'm going to die in my old age. There's no way back from this for me. So his most prized son because he's already lost the first one. That whole relationship holds everything together for Jacob or for Israel. So if I come to your servant my father and the boy is not with us, his life is wrapped up with the boy's life. When he sees that the boy is not with us, he will die. Then your servants will have brought the gray hairs of your servant our father down to Sheol in sorrow. Your servant became accountable to my father for this boy, saying, if I do not return him to you, I will always bear the guilt of sinning against you, my father. Now please let your servant remain here as the Lord's slave in place of the boy. Let him go back with the brothers. For how can I go back to my father without the boy? I could not bear to see the grief that would overwhelm my father. So Judah is saying, keep me. I forfeit my life so that there's really peace. I'm going to forfeit my life for the peace of my family. Chapter 44, this long narrative that kind of sets up the whole reason why we have this story in the scripture.
I remember taking this over the summer. My professor kind of like threw out the question, so is Judah painted in a positive light, do you think? He said no, interestingly enough.
Yeah.
Because he would say Judah's just acting for his own, like,
Save my neck.
Yeah. Instead of like, because a lot of people be like, oh, well, Judah, he's taking on the mantle now, and he's acting in a way fitting of Messiah's line.
Well, I see him as making a promise to his father, and he's keeping it the best way he knows how. Because he told him, if he doesn't come back, you can have my life. And so what he's done is a bit better. He's given his life. He's meeting his father's promise, but the boy's back.
Yeah.
So not like
so that's kind of how I see it.
Not overwhelmingly valiant.
It's
though.
kind of mixed.
Oh no.
It's kind of mixed.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
you
I don't-
see him trying to keep his word to his father, but trying to
Which is
save
good.
right, but saving his neck too at the same
Yeah.
time.
He's not on a white horse
Right,
by any
right.
means.
I
I
also
agree.
want to see his, I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying I agree.
And it was Judah that started this whole ball rolling. It was Judah's idea.
Judah
Let's
is
sell
where
him.
Jesus is coming from anyhow, so the lineage matters.
Well, yeah, it matters.
Yeah.
It matters in hindsight.
Right.
But did it matter in
They didn't
foresight?
know- They didn't know that, but
Right.
we know it because we're on this side.
Right.
So we know that the lineage
Right.
matters now.
Okay, so I have a different opinion. I would think that the guilt from everything that happened with Joseph would make it a genuine thing. With everything.
He does.
So that he's overcoming.
Yeah, he doesn't want to see his father grieve again.
I think it's genuine,
Yeah.
but is it like a redemption story kind of thing? Like, is it a like now Judah's like the good guy in the story? Kind of is he
Yeah.
the hero of the story?
So he's not
And
a
I would
type.
say no.
He's not a type of Christ
Right.
in this
Yeah.
because the stories don't match like they should. But what it is, there's a foundational behavior here that says, I'm going to give my life for another. Now, up until this time, have we seen that in any of the stories that we've wandered through since Cain killed Abel? Is there anyone who's giving their life or giving their freedom so that another one can go free? And up until this point, I can't think
You
of
see
any.
a lot of people doing things for themselves,
Yeah.
but not for others to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, Jacob did some things
Yeah,
to
he
get what
was
he
involved,
wanted.
Yeah.
He worked extra for
Leah,
Rachel and that
Rachel, yeah.
and that kind of thing. So you would think, well, that was unfair, but he did it because he loved her. And da da da. But
Yeah,
it was
even
for
when he was
him.
running into Esau again. He
Yeah.
was putting everybody in front and doing what he
Yeah.
could to try to get in the good graces.
That's right.
So I mean, he was
It
doing it all for
wasn't
him.
perfect.
Yeah.
Well, no, but I mean, but you're saying we don't see nobody doing it, laying his life down for anybody else, but you do see
Yeah.
people doing some things.
And really, just and I don't, maybe I'm trying to think. This is the only place I know of in Genesis. And the next time we see a life given for another is Passover
Yeah.
and that whole thing.
I can't.
I don't think there's anything.
But not that.
Sorry,
Go ahead,
the
go
ram with The Binding of
Oh yeah,
Isaac.
yeah. Isaac,
Only
that's
thing.
right. The ram. That's right.
Ram? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But I was thinking just before you said Cain and Abel, is that right?
Yeah.
Which one was the brother that was killed? Abel.
Abel.
Was killed. So Abel sacrificed, gave unblemished animals or whatever.
Yeah. His offering was acceptable to God.
Yeah, whereas the other one was vegetables and fruit.
Cain's wasn't,
His own works.
and really because of his heart more than it was the thing.
Right, with the heart situation. So that's how, thinking of Reuben and
Judah.
I was thinking that's sort of like a Cain and Abel thing, even though they didn't get their life. Reuben was the oldest, correct?
Right.
And so for Reuben said, I'll give you my boys, but the up next in line of brother said, I'll give you my life. To me, it's compared to the Abel and Cain. It's not giving his life, but he is in a
Yeah.
sense giving his life.
Yeah. It does have similarities
He
in
had-
that.
He deemed himself. What's the word? So it says, so let it be written. You know? We sure don't have that today.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Reuben being the oldest failed,
Right.
and we see a younger brother.
That's in Chief
So some of the themes that we've followed through are kind of being undergirded in this story as well. But it's still not the point of the whole story.
Yeah.
The point is that all of this happens, and it still requires the forgiveness of Joseph. So we find that. So the character that we're looking for, everybody else is kind of supporting cast to what Joseph ultimately does here in chapter
Joseph is
45.
the main dude.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how they brought that definition. I marked that twice in my Bible, that the cup, obviously Joseph, something about Joseph's cup, they think he knows all this stuff, and here Joseph comes back and says, I know it, whether I have the cup or not.
Right. Yeah.
I found that in why they used
I think
those terms.
that's a good
right?
question. I think the cup of divination is a cover.
Yeah.
This was revealed to me, and actually he could say, and I revealed this to you in a dream how many years ago.
Yeah.
But the cup kind of gives that whole thing, that Egyptian magic hocus pocus thing, kind of gives him cover for the knowledge that he does have, because so far he knows all the characters, but they don't know him at all.
And so, I know we're going to find out why he's doing this, but why is he doing this?
Yeah.
We're going to wait.
Well,
Next chapter.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're fixing to get there,
Don't
but
tell me, but tell me.
just keep redemption in mind.
Don't tell me. I don't want to know what.
So Judah gives this heartfelt plea. If you were making this into a Hollywood movie,
Yeah.
it would be this.
sad music would be playing.
Yeah, you'd have this
Tears
great
would be flowing.
Charleston Heston moment where he's just pleading, and we finally get to that place where Joseph can no longer keep his composure in front of all his attendants. So he called out, "Send everyone away from me." No one was with him when he revealed his identity to his brothers. So he says, when everyone send everyone away, he's talking about the Egyptians. It's just him and his family left there. And he says, no one was with him when he revealed his identity to his brothers, but he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard it, and also Pharaoh's household heard it. So he's all this is going on in Pharaoh's palace.
Yeah. And then, can you imagine how loud that was if everyone was hearing, and here he is second in command? Do we go run in there and help this man, or what's
Yeah.
going on in there?
And they're feeling it. They're like, a secret is unveiled.
So it does really illustrate the power of the emotion that's going on here. How utterly overwhelming it is to have lost and now have found. It's kind of like the prodigal story in a sense, in that all of this was lost to him, and all at once it's been brought back, and it's overwhelming. And I don't want to connect the two, but imagine a God-sized type of weeping over having his creation back, and that it utterly shaped the heavens for what Jesus did for him. I don't want to dwell on that too much, but it does kind of jump me to that thought of the one that has all the power.
Well, even
Still,
in our own personal emotional time when we accept Christ, it should have overwhelmed
it's
us.
overwhelming. Yeah. So his grief, what would you call this kind of weeping? It's not grief. I think he's past the grieving of it.
Wailing is what Hebrews said.
Wailing.
Wailing.
It's just an overwhelming emotion, I guess. That
They
And
probably
they-
wondered,
And
why is this man
their
crying?
culture, at least when even now, they are very demonstrative people.
yeah.
Even their language, they do that, from the back of
Yeah.
their throats.
Yeah.
And so when they pray, it's that.
That's why I made a
philosophy,
C in
it's
Hebrew.
their full body. That's the reason they rock. That's the reason they
Yeah.
handle it. So they're very demonstrative people. That's why they hired people when someone died to be grieving, even if no one else is grieving. They had to hire
Right.
grievers. So even him being a Hebrew of Hebrews, even though
Yeah.
he'd been in Egypt, it would have been normal.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? The wailing would have been acceptable. The wailing, they would have known.
Right.
Wow, look at the wailing happening here. Because they're very demonstrative.
So then he said to his brothers, I'm Joseph. Is my father still living? So the pieces aren't all in place yet. But they could not answer him because they were terrified.
He's grieving and everything, wailing, like you said, emotional. And then he says, I am Joseph.
Yeah, puts them on.
Or is he going to kill me now? He's got the power.
Yeah.
Here's the power.
Yeah, imagine that scene
Uh-uh.
where, they are convinced he's dead because they have convinced himself that he's.
Something
Yeah.
happened. Yeah.
So their own deception has become their truth, and then the reality is there before them, and it's not only there before them, but has really he becomes their savior in a real sense. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Please come near me," and they came near. He said, "I am Joseph, your brother," he said, "the one you sold into Egypt." He sold him to the Ishmaelites. They just happened to go to Egypt. So he says, and now don't be grieved or angry with yourselves for selling me here, because God sent me ahead of you to preserve life. So God's been kind of absent. Not a lot being said or being recognized about God. Nobody's really paying attention. But somewhere along the line, Joseph has come to understand that the things that have happened in his life could have only been the providence of God, the God of his childhood. And so this is why I'm here. I know exactly why all these things had to happen. So at some point even, Joseph, he's at peace with what happened, but he's overwhelmed with emotion at the return of the relationships that he's lost. Which to me is crazy. He's just got both ends of things working at the same time. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there will be 5 more years without plowing or harvesting. God sent me ahead of you to establish you as a remnant within the land and to keep you alive by a great deliverance. I love that. Okay. So here I am, and I am sustaining for who? For God as a remnant. Well, we say it's for God. God sent me ahead so that there would be a remnant. Who else would it be for?
Yeah, it's his plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Therefore, it was not you who sent me here. It was not you that sent me down to the pit. God sent me down to the pit. Okay? And he had all this worked out. So a lot of times when we're in the pits of life,
Yeah. God's at work.
and we think, man, what is God doing? Because he is certainly capable and certainly loving and certainly willing enough to do. He doesn't turn us out. And man, I had this conversation this past week with a kid in jail. He feels like he's being punished. I asked him if he was a believer. He told me about his church and blah, 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 blah. I said, man, if you believe in Jesus, Jesus already took your punishment for your mess up right here. What is God going to do with it here? And you could see the lights go off. Just like that. You could see it happen in his face. He's thinking, oh yeah, I don't have to continue what I was doing, what that got me here. I really can make a change because here I am. And your boy, by the way, Russell, I don't know, maybe a preacher one day.
That would be awesome.
I'm not kidding. Family friend, but this has lost both his parents, right? And a sister. And boy, I can see it in him every time. Every time I go in the room, I see something new.
So is he in
every
prison?
Yeah.
He's in prison.
And he's going to spend a little time, I think. But boy, he has latched on to God, and God has latched on to him. And
With him while he's there.
I tell you, I love watching with these guys. So,
We had one of those in community hands this week.
huh,
Why does God hate me?
he don't hate you.
We're sitting here now for him to provide
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah. Therefore, it was not you that sent me here, but God. He has made me a father to Pharaoh, Lord of his entire household and ruler over the land of Egypt. So, when he says that he's made me a father to Pharaoh, he's saying, I am the one that's giving life to Pharaoh through the work that he's given me to do, to preserve and to sustain through these very difficult times. So, return quickly to my father and say to him, this is what your son Joseph says. Can you imagine that? Okay, guess what, Dad?
Dad, are you sitting?
Up from the dead, Joseph has spoken to us. No, now they got to go back and face the truth.
Oh, yeah. That
Yeah.
is unbelievable.
Say, God has made me Lord over all Egypt. Come down to me without delay. You can settle in the land of Goshen and be near me. You, your children, and your grandchildren, your flocks, your herds, and all you have. So I was listening to something, I think it was the Bible Project, and the way that Goshen and garden are one letter off. Tim Mackey says that this is actually Garshin in the Hebrew, and it's just off from the same word that would be garden, and you would say it Garshin. It's not Garshin. It's not. You wouldn't say it Garshin in Hebrew. It's a transliteration, I guess, for the same word that would be garden in, like the Garden of Eden. So his point in that was that this is a little Eden.
Yeah, for a season.
Yeah. So they wind up down in the pit, but God turns it into a garden, and there He's going to have His remnant, and everything's going to be taken care of.
Yeah, because Joseph's prepared for the 5 years.
Because he's prepared.
The
Yeah.
others out there aren't prepared.
Yeah.
You better come down here. You better go
Yeah.
down and have them get here.
Yeah. The image of God is in the garden with His people. That would be, if you want to carry it that far, Joseph, performing as God's image, there sustaining, caring, creating, all those things. So I know it's a stretch, but I like the themes, man. It's discovering these themes has changed the whole way I read the Old Testament, totally and completely. So he says, there I will sustain you, for there you will have 5 more years of famine. Otherwise, you, your household, and everything you have will become destitute. Look, your eyes and the eyes of my brother Benjamin can see that I'm the one speaking to you. So what does he mean by that? Look, your eyes and the eyes of my brother Benjamin can see. They all recognize that this is truly who I am, truly Joseph. Now that your eyes are open to me, surely you can see that it's me. Tell your father all about my glory in Egypt. Why is that thrown in there?
He's rich.
Well,
Well,
remember the dreams?
dream.
Yeah,
That's
that's right.
He-
That's
yeah.
right.
He even told Daddy the dream.
Yeah, that's right.
Daddy thought, what do you mean?
That's right.
Sun and the moon are gonna bow before you, boy.
Yeah. So the writer's reminding us of the dream in a very subtle way. Tell the Father about all my glory in Egypt and about all you have seen, and bring my father quickly. So then Joseph threw his arms around his brother Benjamin and wept, and Benjamin wept on his shoulder. Joseph kissed each of his brothers as he wept, and after his brothers talked to him. So I bet that was a conversation. They're thinking, have you got any way to break it to Dad that we've been lying to him for the last... Can you pull out that cup?
I was
Yeah.
sitting here thinking, the boys, well, give me the details. Give me the ABC. What happened when we left here?
Yeah.
Who did this thing?
Oh, well, you're not going to believe what happened here.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're saying to Joseph, look in that cup of divination and give us some pointers as to how to deal with dear old Dad. Yep. When the news reached Pharaoh's palace, Joseph's brothers have come. Pharaoh and his servants were pleased. Pharaoh said to Joseph, tell your brothers, do this, load your animals and go back to the land of Canaan. Get your father, your families, and come back to me. I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, which was Goshen, and you can eat from the richness of the land. You are also commanded to tell them, do this, take wagons from the land of Egypt for your descendants and your wives, and bring your father here. Do not be concerned about your belongings, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours. So this is my favorite moving project. You just load the people up. You don't have to worry about the furniture. You just load up your animals and the people and come on, because you're going to have the best that we have to offer.
This lady for you, this lady.
Oh, so y'all hear all of this, don't you? They're going to the garden that is in the pit that God has made for them. And the best of everything is there.
Heaven's waiting for
And
us.
yeah, you're not going to have to do a thing. Just load up your family and bring them on. Yeah,
But
this,
Joseph was confident that Pharaoh would be okay with that because he had already mentioned for them to do that
Yeah.
before Pharaoh ever said it.
well, and Joseph says, I'm the father of Pharaoh. I'm taking care of everybody.
Yeah,
It's kind of like what I say goes.
Yeah, Pharaoh knows that what I said happens, and he's listening to me.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
That's a pretty good place to be in.
That's
Like
all.
in the Mel Brooks film, I forget what it is, History of the World or something. It's good to be the king, he says. For Joseph, it's good to be the guy that takes care of the Pharaoh.
There's a movie?
Yeah, there's an old movie, but there is a pretty good movie about this. I forget which one of the. It's one of the Christian
No, that's
movie
Wait,
production houses, but they actually did a pretty good job.
They did the Egypt.
And I think it's called Joseph, and it's got a subtitle. Yeah, it was pretty fair. Most of the time they're cheesy and they're not done very well, but of course it's been a while since I watched it too. It may not be as good as I remember.
Sounds like a good church movie night.
Yeah, it would be good for a church movie night.
Where was Joseph maybe?
And I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
I just thought of something I need to. The sheriff just built his training center and he's got a big projection room, but they don't have a screen. They put some special paint on the wall and it worked. Man, I saw it. It worked so good. So I'm gonna put in here and lower that projector so it's not.
Yeah.
They sell that paint. You can do that.
Yeah.
It's you get a screen paint or something.
Yeah. All right. So the sons of Israel did this. Joseph gave them wagons as Pharaoh had commanded, and he gave them provisions for the journey. He gave each of his brothers changes of clothes, but he gave Benjamin 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of
He's
clothes.
certainly showing favoritism.
So Benjamin never has to smell his clothes. He gets to change his clothes.
And Benjamin's going, I smell
Yeah.
a favorite one here. Even this new Pharaoh likes
Yeah.
Yeah.
So every time we see anything from Rachel show up, it's in abundance. There's an extravagance involved. And I don't know what that necessarily means, but it seems to mean something.
In Israel, she's big.
Yeah,
she's big
Yeah.
to this day. Rachel watches over all their soldiers. Everywhere you go, something's about Rachel, so it's big to
Yeah.
to the
So I really am going to do some more work in that maybe, but I was just thinking
She's
about
the
it when I was
mother of
reading
all
through
of
this
them or
today.
something, you know, like
Yeah.
I see Eve as the mother.
Well, and I see Joseph as
Yeah.
as being their shining star too.
Mhm.
But wouldn't you think Benjamin's probably like a spoiled brat?
Well, we're never told that, so I would hate to assume that all of this just kind of goes to his head naturally.
I know it's just
I think he's pretty rotten. I mean,
Yeah.
That's our terminology.
he's the baby anyway, so he's going to be rotten anyway, 'cause he's the baby.
Try with Benjamin's.
So listen to this. We got verse 23. He sent his father the following: 10 donkeys carrying the best produce of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys carrying grain, food, and provisions for his father on the journey. So he's sending food enough to get there and enough to make the journey back. So Joseph sent his brothers on their way, and as they were leaving, he said to them, "What? Don't argue along the way."
Love it.
What is that? What is that?
Don't be
Just
trying-
trying to figure out what
How
to
they're going to lie and tell the truth.
what they're gonna tell the
whatever.
father.
Yeah. Maybe so, and maybe he intentionally treating Benjamin in an elevated state to see just how much they have changed. Are they going to get jealous and angry at Benjamin
Right.
now because he's being treated in some special way that we now know Joseph was treated in a particular way in the
Because of
dream
his preference.
because it was a foreshadowing of what God was preparing. If everyone could have heard with the ears that what God was trying to say, well, they couldn't, could they? So what is the lesson there? God uses our insolence and our anger and our jealousy and our pride to accomplish a good thing. Had they not treated Joseph the way that they did, how would Joseph have ever wound up in Pharaoh's court? So there are times where we look and we say, what is God up to? Just be content with saying, God's up to something. And I hope I've got the ears to hear and the eyes to see when it happens. Because he's always up to something. And it doesn't require that we're always good. And then we can carry that even further in a different end of the spectrum. But Nebuchadnezzar and Darius and Cyrus weren't good people, but God used them for good. How does that happen? Because he's God and he can do that kind of stuff when even when we don't know it's happening. But how about when we know that it's to happen and we can surrender those things? It's just all kind of weaves into our story too.
In our time.
Yeah.
Who would have
Yeah.
ever thought that being in a concentration camp and tons of fleas all over your body was a blessing from God?
Right.
But
Right.
It kept the soldiers away.
It kept the soldiers away. That's right. Wow. I'd forgotten that part of that story. So listen, so in verse 25, what do? So they went up from Egypt and came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan. And they said, Joseph is still alive.
Let's just blurt it out.
And guess what? He's the ruler over all of Egypt. So I guess the best way to break the news is to just get it out
Well,
there.
they're excited. You know?
Look at what we have.
So Jacob was stunned.
Yeah.
And he didn't have a heart attack. He didn't go to the land of Sheol. He was just stunned.
That to me sounds like a heart attack.
What translation?
I've got New King. So
Yeah.
when his heart stood still. Yeah.
So Jacob, yeah, that word. Yeah, what is that? Jacob's heart was numb. Yeah. So stood still, yeah. And I know that feeling. That'll scare the bejesus out of you.
Yeah.
Jacob was stunned, for he did not believe him.
Yeah.
So, and why would, I mean, they've been carrying this charade on for a long time. But when they told Jacob all that Joseph had said to them, and when he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent to transport him, the spirit of their father Jacob revived. So this is the first time in this whole episode that we see any hint of hope in Jacob's spirit. He's been downcast and unable to deal with the loss of Joseph all this time. Even Benjamin, could not help him overcome the loss completely of Joseph, but now it's coming back. Then Israel said, "Enough, my son is still alive. I will go to see him before I die."
Don't say anything else because my heart can't handle it.
That's right. That's right.
You know,
Just take-
let's go.
just take
Everybody's
me
ready.
there.
Let's
Just
go get
take me.
everybody.
Yeah.
So here's another way that I'm viewing some of the language here. So in the place of the land of promise, we hear about dying a lot from Jacob, who holds the promise. But when we are speaking about life, it's about what's going on in the pit of Egypt and how God has prepared a garden there. So what determines life? And God, wherever God is.
Whoever he is.
Yeah.
No matter if you're in
And
the pit or if you're in the promised land.
that's right.
Where he is.
Wherever He is and His provision for your
Aaron
life.
tried to tell us that in the beginning too. I'm not going, you don't go, Lord.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, well,
That's
I'm
right.
going where you go.
Yep. So any comments about 40, 45? Anything at all that may have come across while we were talking? Got anything?
Well,
Come on, bro.
so that verse 7, when Jacob first drops it all, I wrote my paper for my class this summer on the idea of remnant, because this is the first time it used the word remnant in
Right?
the Bible.
Yeah.
And well, I mean, like the related word is used in passing, but this is the first time I think it's like the idea of like salvation comes. Like that word great deliverance, in other translations is salvation, right? And
Right.
so I wrote my paper exploring the language here, because it's like really technical, and how like other parts of the Old Testament use the specific phrase from here, and I tried to like show that there was a correlation between the first use of it here, like the story of Joseph, and what remnant meant then, like God
So-
providentially working, and how that influenced like the prophets, like especially
So it
Micah.
carries through. Yeah, Micah.
Yeah,
Now,
Micah.
That's what we were just thinking
Always
about.
got a remnant.
Yeah.
Even today,
Yeah,
there's a remnant.
it was. I really.
So this is the foundational passage for all the other passages.
Yeah, yeah. And I also wrote in there, because I didn't put a ton of effort into it. Like, I really wanted to more study, like, how would the prophets have written, because Amos uses the phrase, it is only found here once, the remnant of Joseph. And it almost makes
Right.
me think.
We talked about that.
Really?
Yeah, we talked about that
The
on Wednesday
remnant
night.
of Joseph. And how is he thinking back of Genesis 45 when it's.
Yeah, and we talked about that going back to this.
Even Amos wrote it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I could probably pick that back up and do an actual like article on that one day.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah,
That's pretty good.
You done allowed the job first time, huh, brother?
honestly, yeah. That was a hard week. Okay, I did 8 hours a day of lectures for a
Oh
week. That was
God, I
rough.
don't know how anybody does
I was
that.
ready to be over with it.
That was a lot.
I would've-
Information.
Yeah.
I would have been spaghetti.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was over it, but it was a fun thing to do. Just check all that out.
Well, wouldn't
Let's
the
see.
prophets? We're in the timing. We're in the time frame that they had the handwritten scribe work for him to have seen a remnant of. I'm just wondering where Amos is in that timeline, because I don't know the chronological thing. Because just for me, when I saw the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah.
So
you know,
Amos,
and like,
yeah.
okay, they were able to. I didn't have a clue what I was looking at, but I saw the original piece of
Amos-
document and knew that Isaiah had written it or whomever. You know.
He's after Hezekiah's reforms, so they could have very well had all they needed to
Right
have
here.
as far as the law.
But they could have had it written where he would have seen.
Who's after Hezekiah?
Amos,
He
Oh
was
no,
there.
is he?
or either or right there with them
Yeah.
at the same time.
Hezekiah was because Amos was a prophet to the northern kingdom, right? He was like
Correct.
one of the first.
Yeah,
Okay.
he was, but in the north. No, he was from the
thinking
south
of
and went
Josiah.
north.
Yeah.
He was from the south and he went north.
Yeah. I'm sure. Like at the very least, they like knew like the people in the temple. You know, they would have the scripture.
Yeah, that's what I was
Like
supposed to say.
law,
How much it
yeah.
would just been normal for the prophets to have written like the remnant of Joseph.
Yeah, and that opens the discussion. Like looking at the remnant of Joseph. Like the first use of the word remnant in the Bible is from Joseph, so
Yeah.
it's got to be on his mind. I think
Yeah, so here's my
a
timeline. It's sideways, so you have to kind of
Turn your head on.
turn your head.
So there's Amos. Amos.
Yeah, Amos is here. Where's,
First thing.
oh man, Hezekiah is letter I. So he was right before Hezekiah, or possibly at the same time.
Okay,
Amos, and then here's Hezekiah right here.
gotcha. Huh, I always thought that Amos was before Isaiah. My bad.
Yeah,
Early.
we're going through all of these, trying to make sense.
Yeah.
And Jennifer Rothschild just came out with her new study on Amos.
Amos. I always think of
Amos Moses.
what was his name?
Yeah.
Amos Moses.
Jerry
Jerry Reed.
Amos and Andy show.
Yeah, I remember that show. You can't bring that up nowadays,
Amos
though.
Moses song too,
Uh.
Amos Moses.
So we'll do the first few verses, and then when we get down to the genealogy, we'll stop tonight. So Israel set out with all that he had and came to Beersheba, and he offered sacrifices to God of his father Isaac. So Beersheba, you remember. Yes, sir.
Is there significance in between the sudden shift in between Jacob to Israel?
Man, this particular section shifts back and forth all the time. And I need to really do a little more work on that, because I haven't found anything that just addresses directly why the writer would do that. It's not different sources in this particular section of Genesis that would just say, okay, they're getting it from one source and another source. Because it'll change in one verse. Yeah.
It has that sudden shift.
Yeah. But I think when they do use the name Israel, I think it is tying back to the whole promise, that entire thread, and kind of bringing what is being mentioned around that into that thread of the promise. And so that's some of this. And I do think, we mentioned this 2 or 3 weeks ago, that when they're speaking of ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, they tend to use Jacob.
Yeah, you never can call Israel.
Yeah.
When they talk about God, it's Abraham,
Yeah.
Isaac, Jacob. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob.
Yeah, but here's Israel when he's making sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. So it's kind of like
It's the writer doing it.
Yeah.
Probably more so than they would
Yeah.
call him Jacob.
Well, here's God, who changed his name to Israel. God spoke to Israel in a vision, Jacob, Jacob.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he said, and Jacob said, "Here I am." This is the first time in a long time we've had a direct voice from God. So God said, "I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make you into a great nation there. I will go down with you to Egypt. I will also bring you back. Joseph will close your eyes when you die." So the reassurance is what? The promise is still there.
Yeah.
Just because you're leaving the promised land has nothing to do with this. I'm still going to make you a great nation, and the son Joseph is going to be there with you, is what he's saying. So Jacob left Beersheba. The sons of Israel, it'll almost drive you crazy, huh, Chewie? Once you see it. The sons of Israel took their father Jacob in the wagons Pharaoh had sent to carry them. So that's the 4th time that this phrase has come about, that Pharaoh is involved in this process that ultimately changes the whole complexion of his country. Okay, so God is including Pharaoh, okay, and that comes in to play when we get to Exodus. All of this, that Pharaoh has participated in the very thing that ultimately brings downfall to Egypt. God gets rid of the old place of exile and brings them into the promised land, and then the next thing on the horizon when they sin again is a new place of exile. Okay? And the old place of exile proves to be totally inept at helping at all. If you remember, they go to Egypt not once but twice, trying to build an alliance to defeat their enemies from the north, whatever they may have been at the time, and Egypt just can't do it. They're just pitiful. I mean, you never do hear from them again as a power in history, really, after this, after Exodus. So he said they took their cattle and the possessions they had acquired in the land of Canaan. Then Jacob and all his offspring came to Egypt, his sons and grandsons, his daughters and granddaughters, indeed all his offspring he brought to Egypt. So the whole family's there. The remnant is the family. And then here's all the names. But and that's,
I wonder if anything is important there.
huh?
I wonder if anything is actually.
I'm sure there
Like
is.
epithets and stuff like that.
It gives a number. 66. Joseph had two sons born to him. That's 2. That's 68. So those at Jacob's house when they came to Egypt was how many? 70. And that's where a lot of debate goes on about, did Jesus send out 70 or 72? And I've heard the scholars go on about the 70. If it's 70, it's, I don't know.
It doesn't matter.
He's
just sitting
It really doesn't matter, but that's where you can carry these thematic ideas a little too far
But
sometimes.
many people, they all believe they can trace their roots back to the original tribe. So
Yeah.
to them, this matters.
That's right, but
No,
not so much to us.
no.
Okay, it's 7:04, and I'm not going to get into this last part. We can take up the last part of 46 and 40 and the rest of it. It moves pretty quick after this.
Brats, huh?
We all have babies in our families. We know who the brides are.
Well, I thought